Hey everybody, welcome back to the Audience Podcast. I am your host, Matt. Today we're talking about 5 videos about podcasting, about making a more successful podcast that are worth your time. Coincidentally, they're all on the Castos YouTube page. So if you're not already a Castos YouTube subscriber, go to youtube.com/Castos. Make sure you subscribe, smash that like button, ring the bell, all the things that the kids say these days about their YouTube channels. But I've created a whole bunch of videos. It's actually one of the focuses that I've had since I started my gig here at Castos as Director of Podcaster Success, is to really bring not only the community feel, the interactive feel, which I feel YouTube brings to the table, especially for podcasters, but to create some helpful tutorials and some fun tips and tricks that I've leveraged for podcasting and which I'm discovering now talking to folks like you listening to this podcast or watching this channel. This is simulcasted, so you might be watching me or listening to me right now. Both will be either on our podcast or our YouTube page. So the first tip that I have, or the first video that's worth your time, is creating a podcast checklist using Notion templates. So as you've heard me say before on this podcast, if you go to castos.com/podcastgrader, and you get a little grade on your podcasting journey, it tells you where you're at and gives you some helpful advice. We also have these downloadable blueprints or checklists that you can use to structure your show, to make a better structure around your podcast. And we use Notion at Castos. You might be a Notion user right now, or you might be finding yourself like, hey, I need to find a place to centralize my podcast notes, research, show notes, organization. I mean, I use Notion now for a lot of things around my podcast. It's not only setting an outline or a framework for each show that I'm about to go into, but I use all of their different Kanban boards for scheduling guests. Some of the podcasts that I do, I sell advertising on, so I'm using that to track who's paid for advertising, which shows they've been attached to, etc. But in this video, I'll go through how to set up that Notion list and give you the helpful advice on the 5 stages of setting up a podcast interview. So if that's interesting to you, definitely check out that first video, and very useful. And again, if you go to the castos.com/podcastgrader URL, you can actually copy this link. You can actually copy the Notion template right into your Notion account, which you can set up for free and be off and on the way. You can copy paste this template and use it however you feel fit. You don't have to, there's a lot in this template. This is like a huge brain dump of everything that I do and know and still continue to learn about podcasting dumped into one file so you can learn from it and take the parts that you find useful. The next video is a quick overview/review/how-to of a web platform called Auphonic. And Auphonic, very popular amongst podcasters. I've heard about it over the course of many years now. I know a bunch of people who use this product, and I said, well, let me revisit it and give our YouTube audience a chance to take a look at it. So Auphonic can make your podcast sound way better, and it can do it for free. So, of course, there's a limit on free. It covers around what they call 2 hours of processing time a month. So if you're a podcaster just starting out, and maybe you're not investing in a lot of equipment, or you don't have the time to really sink into post-editing and post-processing your show, you use something like auphonic.com, and you can upload your podcast episodes there. It does its magic in the background. It'll make your show sound a lot better than how it was originally recorded. Now, if you're using something like a Zoom or a Skype or just your phone to record episodes, this is going to be a huge boon to anybody using those types of tools. It just does the magic for you. You can connect this thing up to Zapier. So you can imagine a world where you just record your episodes, send it up to Dropbox. Dropbox connects to Auphonic, and magically out comes a great sounding podcast on the other side. And in this video, I kind of go through and show you how that all works out with some examples, right, of lesser quality shows that I've recorded to the higher quality tests in this video. So you can really see how this Auphonic, how it does with real audio files as we're recording in the video. So Auphonic, make your podcast sound way better for free. Next up is a video called Podcast Equipment Guide 2020, Best Microphone and Audio Apps and Hosting. Hint, the best podcast host is going to be Castos, of course. A spoiler alert in this video. But I put this video together. It's a little bit on the longer side. So it's 18 minutes. And this is a slide deck that we provide to customers asking about Castos Productions. So if you don't already know, Castos Productions exists. If you're a Castos customer and you're hosting your podcast with us, we can also edit the show for you. So instead of you doing all that post-processing or going through the trouble of using something like an Auphonic, we can edit the shows for you. And usually customers who are coming through the Castos Productions channel, they're new podcasts, right? They're brands, they're small businesses, they are big businesses, and they want to invest now in podcasting, and they've never done it before. So they want to turn to somebody with most of the answers, right? Coincidentally. And that's often the question that we get first is, number one, like, how much does it cost to edit shows? But number two, what podcasting equipment should we use and for which budget? So I've broken down the equipment that I have personal experience with. And actually, mostly everything in this video is stuff that I have personal experience with. So if you're currently watching on YouTube, you'll see I'm using this Heil PR 40. I already forgot the number. PR40, I think, and it's connected to a Focusrite TI2 XLR to USB adapter, which then plugs into my computer. I mean, this stuff is fairly high-end-ish. It's about $400 or $500 to invest into some setup like this. It could possibly very well be overkill, but I talk about this microphone, I talk about the $100 microphone, I talk about a $50 microphone, and all this stuff I've had most experience with, except for one microphone that I haven't used in this list. But fairly straightforward in terms of recommending the microphones and then some other accessories. Not only, things like this adapter, but microphone stands, pop filters, and things like that I've used over the years. Things that might make your life a little bit better. So 18 minutes in length, but don't forget, YouTube chapters exist. So if you hover down at the bottom, you can navigate the video and go to the parts that you're most interested in. Next video is design a podcast brief using Canva. At the time of this recording, I literally just launched it. I literally just published it. But I was doing another video where I ended up on Apple's podcast marketing website, which you'll see in the video. It's podcaster.apple.com. And they have a bunch of resources for beginners. I mean, it's very, very beginner. I'd even say pre-101 level. There's a lot of stuff that is just like getting you in the mindset of becoming a podcaster. And one of the things that they recommend is creating a podcast brief that you would send out to other guests, or if you want to be a guest on the show or you have guests on the show, and they don't really know who you are and you need to kind of warm them up to what your show is all about. You create something like a podcast brief, like a one-page PDF that you can download. I said, man, I'm not a designer by any stretch of the imagination. But what dawned on me is like, wow, I could probably use Canva at canva.com, which is a great resource for people who are not designers, who want to be able to go in and use ready-made templates for free. Like, I could probably use their resume templates to do this. So I started looking through and finding resume templates that I felt were a great fit to make a podcast brief. And that's what I demonstrate in the video. So you'll see me pick a resume template. I drop in my podcast logo and we kind of go through and fill out the information. And this is totally subjective and up to you on how you want to structure. There's no hard rule set around creating a podcast brief, but you can kind of see me go through and set it up. Show name, show premise, who hosts the show, some stats, some top shows and things like that. So I actually impressed myself with this one. I was like, you know what? That was way easier than I thought. And I am now going to do this for every podcast that I host and certainly recommend it to others. So this one's called Design a Podcast Brief Using Canva. Show off your podcast description. Check that out, of course, on youtube.com/Castos. And the last video that I want to recommend as a helpful resource to you is the Elementor templates for podcasters using Seriously Simple Podcasting WordPress plugin. If you're a WordPress user, if you're a Seriously Simple Podcast plugin user, and you're an Elementor user, right? Elementor is a great page builder for WordPress. We released some ready-made templates to make your podcast website a whole heck of a lot easier to create. So maybe you're in the process of starting your first podcast website on WordPress. Maybe you already have a WordPress website for your podcast and you want to just shake things up a bit. You want to design things a little bit better. This video will walk you through our new templates. So again, Elementor makes it really, really easy to build pages on WordPress. And in this video, I'll show you how our templates work. So ready-made things like call to action sections, big hero sections, and the more elusive podcast subscribe buttons. Like we have all of that stuff baked into the Seriously Simple Podcast plugin, and it works a treat with Elementor. So definitely check that out. Again, that's for people who are using WordPress for their podcast site or getting ready to use WordPress for their podcast site. One last time, we'll cover the videos again. It's podcast checklist using Notion templates, using Auphonic to make your podcast sound way better for free, the podcast equipment guide for 2020, covering all of the microphones and accessories and recording software you'll need for your podcast. And then the design a podcast brief using Canva, also for free, show off your podcast description. And then the Elementor templates for podcasters in Seriously Simple Podcasting for free. I guess the key word here is a lot of this stuff is for free, right? So especially Notion, Auphonic, the microphones are not free. You can't find, unless you can find somebody to donate a microphone. That's the only thing that's not free here. I hope you find these 5 videos very useful in today's discussion, at least starting to jog your creative brain to get this stuff up and running. We're heading into the holiday season. We're heading into 2021. Now's a perfect time to either reshape or shake things up with your podcast or get that podcast off the ground. YouTube.com/Castos. Get these videos. Castos.com/thepodcastgrader if you want these resources for free, plus a little private podcast that we do. Castos.com if you want the best podcast hosting service around. We'll see you in the next episode.